Oh, yeah, no, we were just chatting here about the PlayStation Plus kind of packaging. You were alluding to a game coming out here in June.
Yes, sir. So, Jurassic World Evolution 2, which is essentially Roller Coaster Tycoon with dinosaurs. And
I'm gonna have to check this out right now because this sounds right up my kid's alley.
yeah, and as see, I don't know a whole hell of a lot about it, but like from what I've gathered, I believe you set up the park and it's kind of like I said, like Roller Coaster Tycoon or theme park or whatever, whichever theme park simulator you want to use.
Right.
But obviously with Jurassic Park. And the one thing I don't know, and I could be way off base, but I feel like they might have some kind of like genetics lab thing in it where you can kind of make hybrid dinosaurs, which would play into the movie. But the game, even without that, just looks really, really interesting especially for a game that I'm going to get for free. Um,
Yeah, that looks awesome. I'm definitely downloading that too. And I love those simulator type games. My kids love them even more.
yeah,
So this is like right up their alley.
yeah. Peyton's super stoked about it because he's got his. Um, but we were, I actually, I think I might have gotten that for him for Xbox for Christmas, and he ended up he ended up never playing it.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, like he didn't even open it. Like I think when we traded it in, it got traded in as a new game. Um, but it looks like a really good game. I'm not much of a like sim theme park kind of person, but I'll give
Right.
it a shot, especially if it's free.
Yeah, yeah, I will too. I mean, this looks pretty cool. It's funny. I love those type of games, but I don't have the patience to play them anymore.
Right.
That's kind of where look, I think we all grew up on SimCity, and we've kind of talked about that many a time over. And that was kind of back in a day where you had like that, you had Railroad Tycoon, you had some of these really famous sim games that came out of that era when we grew up, and they've obviously evolved into some insane games that they're out now. I love the sim type games, but like I said, I just don't have the patience nor the time really to devote to making it work properly.
Right.
The things I like to watch, though, my kids thoroughly enjoy sandbox mode on those games. Particularly like, and I was texting you last night some of the stuff they were doing in Planet Coaster, like basically designed a theme park of straight that looked like hell. Dug a pit into the ground, and it was just nothing but like fireworks and flames shooting everywhere. And I'm not really entirely certain how this happened, but then they opened up like part of the park like above it with actual rides, and they finally started getting access to it. But they did the same thing, like they just fire all around, like through the walkways, and like people have to walk through fireworks shooting off, and I couldn't figure it out. And then all of a sudden, like it's not turning a profit because they're spending like so much money doing this, but like they're getting these awards because people love this place, and it's like that makes sense. People are stupid.
Yeah. Hell, I'd go once.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's you ain't coming back out of that one. But no, it was funny. They were having a good time with it, and
Welcome to Nihilist Park.
yeah, I'm really curious though about this Jurassic World Evolution 2. You made a comment about um, crossing dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Um, that sounds really interesting. I wonder if that's part of that.
Like I said, I could be thinking of something completely different, but I feel like there's some kind of genetic aspect to it where I believe you can try and crossbreed or do hybrids or something like that.
Yeah, it talks. I found something about cohabitation. I don't know. This looks exciting. Whether that has that or not, man, that looks cool. The graphics are pretty neat too.
Yeah.
Um,
I just want to open up an attraction where it's like you avenge Harambe by throwing people
yes,
into a T-Rex pit.
yes, 100%.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Is there? I know that were any other games that were announced for June by chance?
Not that I really saw. I know that there's the big Days of Play sale coming up. and not just digital games, but physical games will be going on sale too, and physical accessories from PlayStation. If you order it from PlayStation Direct and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
you'll be able to get some physical games and stuff on sale too. So we'll see what comes out of that. But
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's you've got Jurassic World Evolution 2, NBA 2K23, and then Trek to Yomi, which it's Japanese title. It's a samurai slasher. Okay, so I don't know much about the game, obviously, but that's the other free one. So those are the three freebies for PS Plus. The first tier.
Yeah, I might honestly with NBA 2K3, I might download that and give it a shot. I'm gonna be deleting Destiny off of my hard drive.
Are you giving up on it?
I am extremely salty at this point with Bungie and Sony and Microsoft. You know, I get that they're competitors, but there's this pettiness that goes on between Microsoft and Sony when it comes to Destiny 2, where, like, so Bungie started off, obviously, they made Marathon for the Mac, and then they started developing Halo for the Mac before they were bought by Microsoft, and then were a first party company for Microsoft, first party developer.
Mm.
Where they made Halo, Halo 2, Halo Reach. I think they made ODS or Halo 1, 2, and 3. I think they made ODST, and I know that Reach was their last game within the Halo universe and as a Microsoft subsidiary. So a few years back, maybe it was a year or two back, was the 20th anniversary of Halo. And essentially Bungie considered it their 20th or 30th anniversary, whatever. They released weapons into Destiny, and because Microsoft wouldn't sign off on it, they didn't. The weapons look similar and have similar names, but they're not exactly what they are in Halo. And that was the thing. So they have the battle rifle. Instead of the battle rifle, it's the battler, and they have the energy sword that the elites use. And instead of being the two pieces, it's one side. There's two different ones. It's called Truth and Consequences, and one is the one half of it. The other is the other half. Like, it's just stuff that shouldn't have been a big deal. I don't understand why Microsoft didn't sign off on it. I get that you're going to be playing this game on other consoles, or people from other consoles will be able to play it. But that didn't stop you from signing off on Master Chief being in Fortnite.
Right.
Where they can play on everything. Right. So then Sony, and I don't know if this is in a retaliation move or not, but you can play crossplay. Well, you can't. Anything that I bought as far as DLC for Halo, or I mean for Destiny 2, you can't. So if I bought it on Xbox, I can't use it on PS5 or PS4 unless I buy it again. So campaigns, whole expansions to the game, you have to buy twice. And it's fucking stupid.
Yeah, that is dumb.
And so my Destiny playing is over until I get an Xbox again, which I had always planned on eventually doing. But I'm not going to waste any more fucking time playing a game where half the 95% of the content is locked away behind a paywall for shit that I've already paid for.
Yeah. And that you mentioned something too, and I was something I wanted to clear up too. We had talked about it on another podcast with Diablo 2. I think it's timely because Diablo 4 is coming out soon, but about cross-play with that. And I actually misspoke. It's not. There's no cross-play with Diablo 2 between the Switch and the PlayStation or whatever. It's cross-progression. So that works if you're doing it that way. But there are games that are cross-play. That's not one of them. So just figured I'd clear that one up.
Yeah.
But and I'm not even sure if that even made it into an episode. I may have cut that, but it may have been part of a 2 or 3 minute thing where I just had to blob it out because of other content. So,
gee, I wonder what that other content would have been.
Yeah, I wonder who that would have been too.
Here.
Now, going back though, real quick to the PlayStation Plus. We were talking about this before we started recording here too. So there's different tiers of that. You've got the PlayStation Plus Essential, the Extra, or the Premium. I have the Extra package, which I upgraded to last year-ish, whenever Stray came out. And I've been debating about going the other route for Premium because it unlocks a whole slew of classics, let's say this, games that they deem to be acceptable in the classics catalog. And so there's some pretty cool titles in there. So there's like, the Borderlands Definitive Collection. There's a ton of BioShock games in there. There's, I believe, some different Tekken games. True classics, I mean, in all sense. And it also enables, I think, cloud play, which goes back to a conversation we'll have about the Project Q. The thing that I can't stomach on it though is $119.99 plus tax a year.
No,
and that just, I don't know, that just eats me up.
We'll see, and that's why I won't go any higher than the basic, because I'm still pissed off that they took out all those PS4 and PS3 games that you were able to play before.
Right.
If you didn't get them by a certain date, now they're all gone, and it's not like they've replaced them with other games. They just said, "Oh, well, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for your luck, you dirty poor."
Yeah, I only
do games anymore.
Yeah, I only did the Extra, like I said, initially for the Stray, and I think there's some other games I've been able to pick up off of it, which have worked out really well as far as, at least for my kids, like Bug Snacks, and I think some others that, not necessarily anything that I would play, So as far as, value for myself, I really can't speak to that, but value for my kids, certainly. I mean, it's worked out pretty well that way. But yeah, it's hard to fathom. And again, it goes back to what we've talked about with like the Nintendo pricing. Some of their stuff's out of hand too for, for what it is. Yeah, they've got some pretty cool offerings, but that stuff is released so few and far between. It's like, oh, here's your 2 new Genesis games a month.
Right.
If that.
And that was honestly when Peyton got rid of the little period where he got rid of his Switch and didn't have one, I was like, all right, cool. So then next year I don't have to pay for the family plan and I don't have to do this and that. Because honestly, I can't see I don't know that I'm paying for the Nintendo Online Plus or whatever the fuck it's called. Like, I'll pay for the normal Nintendo Online, maybe. But I don't even know if I'll do that because I really don't play online anymore with it.
Right.
I use it. The only thing I use it for is the retro games. And I have well, I don't currently, but I will soon enough have an NES. I have the EverDrives for the NES and SNES. I have a Genesis with an EverDrive in it. I have a 64 with an EverDrive in it. Really the only games that I'm going to end up missing out on as far as that stuff's concerned is the Game Boy games.
Yeah, and I need to, actually remind me of something too. Speaking of that, now I play like Tetris 99 ever so often still, and I still fire up some of the online, Nintendo Online, Super Nintendo, whatever, those things, and utilize those services they have to play those games. That's really about it. The thing that I find funny though is that I just got an email a couple weeks ago. And it says this: the Pac-Man 99 game and DLC are leaving Nintendo Switch Online. So basically, they'll no longer be available for download or purchase as of October the 8th of this year. So if you want to continue playing it beyond October the 8th, you have to either buy the DLC or buy the Unlock pack or the Deluxe pack DLC. And you have to do that prior to September the 8th. So
okay, so you have to buy it prior to September 8th, and then it goes away on October.
So
why do they have to take things away on my fucking birthday?
Yeah, well, here's the crazy thing. So that game, the way it sits now, it's a free online play although it's not really free, you're paying for the service to play it online, but the game itself is free.
Right.
But it's limited. You have that one mode you can play, and that's it. That's what they're taking away. So they're making you basically buy it so you can continue playing it. So, in my thing is, it's like, do you have that much of a fan base that's actually going to purchase that game to be able to keep continuing to play it online? I don't see it.
No.
At least for a long time after. The other one too, I get miffed about too, and I understand it was. I still miss Super Mario 35.
Yeah,
I
that
love
one was really cool.
It was awesome. I had so much fun playing that, and yeah, that's mothballed, never to be heard from again.
I'm still a little bit pissed off that they didn't end up releasing the Super Mario 3D All Stars as like leave it on the eShop. I understand you want to make physical copies rare or whatever. Okay, whatever, dude. But there's literally no reason to limit the purchase of a fucking downloadable game.
Yeah, that's stupid.
It's not like it needs server space, like, besides it being accessible, but it doesn't have online features. It's not costing you really anything. It's on your eShop with the rest of the shit that's on your eShop. There's literally no reason to do that. It was just, God, Nintendo pisses me off.
Yeah, and I get the only thing I could think of because it's Super Mario All Stars, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that that's part of the Super Nintendo online.
No. So it's not Super Mario All Stars.
Okay.
Mario 3D All Stars.
3D All Stars. Okay.
So it's Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and the first
Yeah.
Mario Galaxy game.
I have the physical cart of that, like the Switch thing, but
Yeah.
so that you can't buy that as a downloadable anymore already.
No, when that was supposed to leave so that was supposed to leave stores on whatever the fuck day it was, like last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so at least down here, you could still walk into Target, Walmart, wherever, and still buy physical copies, and it wasn't a big deal. But they took it off their storefront, and you were no longer able to buy it. So when you
God, that game's $100 or more.
Yeah,
Jesus,
that's what I was going to do. I'm looking at price charting. So price charting has it. If you go used, it's, at least according to what they're saying, it's like $90 or something like that. It's $82.87 complete in box. So now let me see if I go new. So let's see.
that's crazy! Wow. Yeah, like I said, that's when I picked up the physical. Like I guess at release, I don't know, wasn't for me.
Yeah. So I mean, I got it because I figured, number one, I love Mario 64, and I always wanted to finish Mario Sunshine, but my copy was screwed up. So if you have it according to price charting, and of course it's not the most accurate, but it does aggregate different sales and stuff and throws them up. So a loose copy is $75.79. Complete in box is $80.50. New is $92, and a graded version goes for $219.23.
That's insane! Wow.
Now, consider this too. It launched at the standard price point of $59.99.
Right.
So, yeah, that's not ridiculous as far as like people were predicting and people were sitting on it, and that's why there was plenty of them to go around. People were buying them up and sitting on them and hoping, oh, Nintendo's going to make this rare, so I'm going to buy 18 copies, and that's going to send my kid to college or buy me a whatever. Because you got these speculators, and we talked about that, how speculators are ruining video game collecting. But so I'm glad to see it hasn't gone super high in price. But I mean, if you think about it, $60, it's up to almost 100. You said, what did you see it for?
Yeah, it was just pop it on eBay and Amazon. It's really anywhere from 60 to up to 120.
Okay, so almost double, or double if if you go with the
And,
120.
and the 60 ones, I'm talking like that's basically uh, game only, like no
Right, just the
box,
card.
no, exactly.
Right. So I mean, it's doing what Nintendo wanted it to do. I don't think it's doing everything that they wanted it to do, but it's just not. It's not worth it, man. It's not. If you didn't get it at launch, or you don't get it for super cheap, or not super cheap, but if you pay more than $60 for it, you're wasting your money.
Yeah, the only game too that's available on their online service is 64. That's obviously through their 64 if you pay for that extra here on this online thing. But the other two obviously aren't. So uh, you
And
know,
Super Mario Sunshine is relatively rare, hard to find. Um, that one, if you want to play, and you can find Mario 3D Land or 3D All Stars for $60. Definitely worth it because you're going to pay less for that than you are Super Mario Sunshine complete inbox and everything.
right,
Um, Mario Galaxy, I'm fairly certain you could walk into like any retro game store and get for like $20. I
right,
could,
right.
I could be off on that one, but I feel like that one's a fairly common Wii game.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I that's one I never owned either of those. But those I think that was one of the reasons why I ended up picking up that 3-pack anyway, was mainly for the sheer fact that I love 64. Played a ton of that, obviously when I was much younger, but was really curious about Sunshine and Galaxy because I'd never played either.
Right.
I'd fallen out of playing anything Mario related, basically in my 20s into my 30s, really, outside of playing like Mario Party or Kart or whatever.
Okay, so here you go. So according to price charting, a complete box case, manual, disc, everything is $16 for Super
Right.
Mario
Yeah.
Galaxy. Right now, let's look up Super Mario Sunshine because that one I know is more um, like just the disc is $32. The game complete is $42.49.
Yeah.
So again, okay, so you bought those two games, then you made out, or if you bought those two games, you're paying basically what you would have paid for Super Mario All Stars, or Super Mario 3D All Stars, and then Mario 64 itself, just the cartridge, is $33.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're making out, and honestly, all right, so $80, you're still saving $10 versus buying each one of those, and that's also assuming you have all three of those.
All the systems in working order too. Yeah.
Right.
So
So you're still, I mean, you're making out.
yeah.
But it's just I don't know, man. It's there's something gross about the whole forced scarcity thing.
Yeah, it's odd. I don't know. I get every once in a while I get kind of bummed out, like thinking about a game that, oh man, I used to play that so long ago, and the one I always go back on too. I always think about the Silent Hill games
Mhm.
and how much I've played those over the years, and now it's like you don't own the original systems. You don't have some of that original software. They're like nowhere to be found anywhere near a new
Right.
system. So
And here
uh,
you go. And the one that I always go back to is Cubivore, which I remember I bought my copy, I want to say for $100, and it was just a disc. Now, a loose just the disc, $373.
that's crazy.
If you have it complete, it's $503. So even just the manual is $182. So buying it complete, you're actually getting a break because the box itself is $118. The manual is $182, and then the disc itself is $173.
That's crazy.
So, or
You're
three
almost,
hundred
bet-
and
you're
seventy-three
almost
dollars.
better off just parting it out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't because I fucking love that game. But and I would love to. I'm sure there's a scan of the manual somewhere online, so I'm gonna have to read it because playing the game and seeing the dialogue in the game itself and knowing what it said, I can't even imagine what that fucking manual said. Like that has to be some fucking. It's probably because it's out there shit. That's
Right.
why it's so expensive. Like I need to read it at some point. But it just all comes back at the end of the day. It all comes back to all these fucking speculators getting into the game market, not getting them to play them, getting them to hold on to them and sit on them and hope that they fucking, uh, make them a profit sometime in the future. Which, going back to another conversation we had regarding Nintendo and the Switch in particular, knowing that those cartridges are so volatile as far as keeping the program on them if they're not used and stuff, maybe this blows up in all their faces because then all they have is these blank fucking little carts that don't do shit. It's got a
Yeah,
fancy
very,
little sticker on it.
yeah, and it very well could. I mean, and it remains to be seen. We're going to start finding that out, I think, in the next, I'd say in the next 10 years, I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I think optimal conditions, we talked about some of this stuff last 30, 40 years.
Right.
Um, but, you and I both know that a lot of these games aren't necessarily handled in the most optimal conditions.
No. And honestly,
Floating around and whatever.
and if we look back into the recent past, there was, I want to say like 2017, sometime between 2017 and 2019, there was an issue with copies of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire for the 3DS. So Omega, I think it was Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire or something like that. Yeah, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. They were actually becoming corrupted. And they came out in, I want to say, not a whole hell of a long time ago.
Let's see. Let's look it up.
2014.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
So within 3 to 4 years, those games were becoming corrupted. And that's on a similar, it's not obviously not the same, but a very similar setup to the Switch games. Now, I've had Switch games that I bought at launch that are still fine. But as they change, I mean, those weren't launch 3DS games either. Those were games that came out later in the life cycle when they had quote unquote improved everything about the 3DS games and their cartridges and stuff.
Yeah, so, and in fact, between their whole thing, so like they're known as, and you just kind of said this, but they're known as Nintendo game cards, and it's a proprietary system, obviously. So they're all designed very similar fashion. Between you're talking about the DS, 3DS, and the Nintendo Switch, they're all flash ROMs. So yeah, I mean, it's very feasible that you're going to we've talked about before, but the Switch game's kind of doing the same thing, and eventually crapping out, kind of in a similar fashion to the Pokemon, that you just mentioned. So it's interesting. Those cards were actually developed by obviously Nintendo, but SanDisk as well, which is a really, really famous media developer for obviously flash storage and whatnot, other flash products. But that's a lot of times where you see the micro SDs that the Switch takes. Typically the ones that are Nintendo Switch, labeled, are all SanDisk. The ones that are officially licensed, if you will. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, and okay, I was wrong on the time frame. I thought it was earlier than. For some reason, I thought it was earlier than 2021, but they're saying that it started happening in 2021. So 7 years.
Yeah. Was it? They gave a reason why, or just?
It was. They won't load because the data becomes lost.
Okay. So gotcha.
So.
Interesting.
Some failures being reported. And it says they're not the only ones that are showing similar issues, but they're the most prominent.
Right.
So it's very interesting. We'll see. I hope to God that it was just limited. They figured it out, and it's not going to affect any games going forward, because I don't want my game collection to fucking stop working. I don't want anybody else's game collection to stop working, especially people who play them.
Right.
That's what I'm concerned. Fuck the speculators. Fuck the I'm gonna buy this and let it sit on the shelf because I just want to say it's in my collection. Um, I'm talking about you, me, kids who are spending their hard-earned allowance or whatever. You know, the hardcore gamers, the people that are even like casual gamers that are just buying games and just for the enjoyment of playing the game. I would hate to see money wasted by those people. But fuck the speculators.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Let's move on. We've talked enough bad about Nintendo for now. Let's jump back to shitting on Sony.
There you go. Fair enough.
For the queue, and this will be. I mean, we've already shit enough.
Yeah, we just flipped out another episode here. Really, the whole thing was pretty much on the queue and really not favorable whatsoever from either me or Rich, honestly. And a lot of it had to do with, what does this thing do? Are you willing to pay X, Y, Z dollars for this thing that might not do anything? And now you're talking about new information about how long is the gameplay going to be because of battery life. And yeah, do you want to dive into that a little bit?
So we're looking at like a 3 to 4 hour battery life for this thing. Now, granted, you're not leaving your house, so you could probably stay tethered to the wall. But what the fuck is the point of having a portable, a handheld system if you gotta be plugged into the wall? Like that just completely fucking. Dude, the more I hear about this thing, I don't understand. Was the person who came up with this thing Sil Pector? Is that who pitched this? Was it Phil Spector just coming into the impact zone and switching around some letters and he's the one that convinced Sony that this was a good idea?
So yeah, he just came in wearing a mask or something.
Yeah, like it doesn't make any sense. And I can't believe, I mean, Sony doesn't have a track record of making shit that fails. They have a track record of making things that don't get supported and then don't do well.
Right.
But this is something that it seems like an abject failure out of the fucking gate. And there's going to be people who buy it. But I really don't know, aside from like influencers and people on YouTube and shit like that, and people with just like way too much money on their hands, I don't know who's buying it.
Well, here's the funny thing too, and I've made a comment, and I said this in jest, but you're going to find this kind of funny. So the comment I made in jest when we were recording our Project Q episode was basically maybe they just used all the leftover parts of the Vita whenever that was cycling out. They just decided, we got all this extra hardware, we'll just throw something together. It's now being reported as of a couple days ago that Project Q has a potential development that dates back to 2015. So I said that jokingly, and maybe I wasn't terribly far off.
Yeah, which pisses me off even more because honestly, dude, the Vita was a good system. It really was. It had some flaws, absolutely had some flaws, but it deserved better than what it got. And what it got was a bunch of gimmicky games at first. That tried to kind of like how when Wii games first came out and everybody was trying to figure out how to work motion into them, like making games and it was like, oh yeah, by the way, we need to make it so you have to wiggle the controller at some point. Like,
yeah,
and it's just they would do stuff with like the back touch screen and the front touch screen,
right?
And it just, dude, I don't know. It should have done so much better. It had such potential. It had good games. It genuinely had good games. And it just, unfortunately, it didn't get support. And it got support in Japan. Like, all kinds of shit came out in Japan. But in the American market, it just didn't do well.
Yeah, and that's always the trick, too. The mobile handheld gaming in this country, anyway, typically at this point, all goes back to a phone. So you're going to have to basically develop something that's going to be competitive to that. Really,
Right.
I mean, that's just how it is. And so, kind of going through the same. I'm on a Game Rant article, by the way, that mentions about this development cycle that dates back to 2015. They also mentioned though that Sony has a couple different teams or multiple studios, I should say, that basically are just working on mobile games. And then kind of, obviously making that push more into that space, and then cloud gaming, which, well, look, they all are. I mean, that's just not anything new. I
Right.
think the funny thing is that with the whole cloud gaming aspect of all this, not that the Project Q even goes that far, obviously, we've already mentioned that time and time again, is that, Google had the Stadia and failed absolutely spectacularly. They've already shut it down. It's over. So it's really, really curious to see where this goes from here, because obviously that's where it's going. But I don't know if Google
Right.
can fail at it.
And that's the thing too is, in Japan, in most of the cities, people take public transportation. Most people take public transportation.
Right.
And they have these high-speed rail systems and stuff. Like it's a very public transportation driven society. Whereas certain places here, like the Northeast Corridor, there's a lot of public transportation and stuff like that. Certain big cities, but it's not. I feel like it's not as big a thing as it is in Japan. And that could very well be me, like, misinterpreting. But from everything that I understand about Japan, which is honestly very little, um, but it seems like they do a lot of transportation, like on trains and buses and stuff. So it would make sense for gaming handhelds, especially Japanese gaming handhelds, to really take off there and to gain a lot of support and get a lot of games.
Yeah.
Whereas here, honestly, where do you play if you had, like, when you had a PSP and when you had other various gaming handhelds, where did you play 'em?
Oh yeah. It would either be A, if I wasn't driving, for one, or B, a lot of times it would be at home,
Right.
just sit in the chair or whatever, and that would be really about it. On the rare occasion that I was away or somewhere, that'd be the time where I would bring it with me, and I would play it at the airport, or I would play it, somewhere I was traveling. But no, that was it. I mean, there was, look, I live in the Midwest. There's no mass transit here.
Right.
It
Which
just
is
doesn't
good
happen.
because you don't want them bleeding everywhere. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I remember as a kid, it was great having portable systems because when my parents were using the TV, because it wasn't like we had a certain amount of TVs, a finite amount of TVs. And when those TVs were used up, we didn't have the internet. I'll play my Game Boy. Okay, cool. Or play outside or do whatever. But if it was too dark or whatever, or it was crappy weather, all right, cool. I'm going to play on my Game Boy. As I got older, if we were going on a drive or going, whatever, and I wasn't driving, all right, I'm going to sit there and play that or
Yeah.
sleep. If I'm traveling, if I'm flying, okay, cool. I'll play my PSP or well, shit. When I flew out to California, oh God, I was just talking about this to somebody the other day. I flew out to California. I brought two batteries with me for my PSP. I was playing my Madden season because that was when you could carry over progress made in your PSP Madden season over to your PS2 Madden.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I played 5 games. The battery died just before I could plug it in to save.
Oh. Oh no.
Yeah. And so I lost all 5 games of
Yeah, because back then you
progress.
didn't have the auto save features or the
Right, right.
yeah.
But like that's when I would play handheld. And honestly now, like, I mean, I remember playing the PSP. I would just be laying in bed and play the PSP or sitting, again, traveling. Um, very, very little did I play it unless there was a reason that I wasn't playing the big system, the console.
Yeah.
Even with my DS, like, I was thinking about this the other day. I got that DS I've done what I've done to it, and I have a bunch of games. And but I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I literally have not played it other than to test the games, like the initial run through after I messed with some things. Um, which actually leads me to another thing I need to shit on Nintendo about, but I want to finish this point first. But I have not sat down and played it
Right.
since I did what I did. Um, so I really I'm struggling because at this point if I want to play portable, I'll play the Switch.
Right. Right.
Now the Switch obviously isn't the easiest thing to travel with, especially on a plane, but it's doable if you want to.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to a couple points here. We can wrap back around and Nintendo and closes up here. But I think, again, that goes back to the big disappointment about this Sony Project Q is that they almost are rushing this just controller modded thing out that's not a true handheld. And it's just disappointing, you know. So I now realize that the Vita, did not quite have the following, but it was still good, and they could have built on that and
Right.
maybe had something that did truly compete with the Switch. You can do that. I mean, that's fine, and add these other features into it. Maybe add cloud gaming, or add something that connects to your, the PS5 outside of being at home. I mean,
Right.
just do different things with it. But yeah, not really liking where this is going, obviously. And then kind of going back to Nintendo, though, they're the ones that dominated the handheld market for many, many years, obviously starting with the Game Boy, or you can go back and forth even beyond before that, but really, really took off with the Game Boy and then moving all the way up to the 3DS and into the Switch, really. But, um, it's still different now. Like, yeah, surely you get a Switch Lite. Um, you're asking for other trouble there. The Switch itself is, yeah, it's certainly doable, but to me, it's not. I don't know. I've never been that great with it. Just holding it, it seems like it's too big.
Well, I need better grips. Like I need to get a grip case thing for it in addition
Mhm.
to getting an actual grip. I need to get a grip case for it so that my fucking big ass meat hooks can hold on to it because it's more comfortable. The Joy Cons are great. All the technology they pack in them. You could have made it a little bit bigger, man. I could,
Yeah.
but it bringing us back to Nintendo. And speaking of the 2DS, 3DS, Nintendo, why do you hate your fans? Why? I understand your anti piracy stance. I 100% understand it. I respect it. I get it. However, why, after you have completely killed the first hand market for your games, for your 3DS and 2DS systems, you've shut down the eShop, you've completely eliminated, barring a few different instances, any way for us to pay the original creators for the games. You've barred us from paying you for the games. You have no way of re releasing these games for resale, nor do you have the intent to re release these games at retail. The only people who benefit at this point from what you just did, which I will explain in a moment, is the secondhand market and resellers. Because what you did was go back and, after shutting down your marketplace, shutting down a way to legally obtain your games electronically, you went and you patched every single software exploit that your system had. So now, if anyone did not previously soft mod their console, they can't do it anymore. I was one of the smart ones who did soft mod my console. I also spent a decent amount of money buying your stuff from your eShop prior to it shutting down and making sure that I had everything that I wanted. That, you know, and I'm talking, you can look at my actual purchase history and see all of the things that I actually paid legitimate money for. But now you've made it so that these scalping sons of bitches on the secondary market can charge an arm and a leg for any game that they want because there's no way to legally obtain it aside from them.
Right.
So, Nintendo, again, I ask, why do you fucking hate your customers?